our little welcome in because Joe,
Perfect.
I'm super excited to have you here. We first met a long time, like 20 months ago now that you said your baby was born in Mom 2.0. And I think you're hilarious. I think you're
Oh,
incredibly hilarious. And I love looking at all your IG stuff and everything you say about trad wives. And not only are you hilarious, but you're an extremely gifted writer. So there you go. There's all my fangirl stuff for
my
you
God.
right now. So welcome to the podcast.
On a platter, on a beautiful platter. Here you go.
That was on a really nice platter. And you know what? I love compliments. So that was
It's like feed it to me, feed it to me.
totally. I mean, I'm actually so
Yeah.
sick of faux humility these days. Now when people say nice things to me and I'm like, you're right. I am
You're
funny.
right. I love that. That is something that I have had to learn myself over the years because actually in high school, one of my friends complimented me and it was like, no, no. And she looked me straight in the eyes and she's like, Joanne, just say thank you. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Just
thank
say
you.
thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you. Just say thank you.
Mhm.
And from there, I have always just said thank you, no matter how uncomfortable it's made me feel. Because I think as women, we're taught to push
To be
that away.
humble.
Totally.
To be humble.
Totally. And men don't feel this way. I looked at my husband the other day and I was like, oh my God, you are looking so fit. And he's like, I know. And I'm just like, yeah, exactly. And the only reason he's looking fit is that he caught hand, foot, and mouth from our kids. And
Oh
he
my
had
God, I know how that is. And he hasn't
Uh-huh,
eaten in
uh-huh.
weeks.
He didn't eat for a week because he got the mouth sores, and so he didn't eat for a week. And because he's a man, he immediately lost 17 pounds. Whereas,
in
I
a
could work
week.
out every day and
Not eat.
eat air and
Right?
And still like
Yeah.
gain a few pounds.
Yeah,
It's how
exactly.
it is. It's not
It's how
fair.
it is.
Hormones, I
It's
say.
my hormonal perimenopause body, and I just
Oh
have
my
to accept it.
God. I hate that. Like, been going through the perimenopause as well. First, just thought it was crazy. And now I'm
Yeah.
just like, life is so unfair.
It's
so unfair.
It's so unfair. But no, my husband will take a compliment, as will every man who's ever existed. And we just need to learn to take it. So thank you for those.
They'll be
Thank
like, yes,
you.
you're welcome.
Yes.
You're welcome. Let's get into your book, the newest book, The Sicilian Inheritance. Because first of all, it made me want to go to Italy and to
good.
Sicily.
Good.
Just like, I want to call it the lusciousness of all the surroundings like you wrote about. But also the murder element in the whole thing and the conspiracy. And this was on your own family history. So I'm super curious to know, like, what did you find out in your family that you then chose to write this book?
So much. And I love the way that you just described it. And I'm happy that it made you want to go to Sicily because that's one of my goals. I mean, I set out with Sicilian Inheritance to write this delicious adventure. I want people to be hungry. I want you to crave incredible Sicilian food and to want to book a trip to Sicily. The New York Times.
Achieved.
Yeah.
I was going to say, right now you've achieved it. I'm like, oh, Anya.
The New York Times reviewer, which it was an honor to have it reviewed in the Times, but they said two things that were amazing. One, they compared me to John Updike, which is so fucking hilarious. I mean, I'm like,
I will talk John Updike, honestly. So
I know, and I will say that forever. I'll be fighting with my husband, and I'll be like, "Do you remember the time that the New York Times compared me to John Updike?" And he's like, "Shut up!" And I'm going to tattoo that on my ass. But more importantly, they said it made them want to book a trip to Sicily, and I'm like, "Excellent, goal achieved. That is all that I want you to do." But it is loosely based on an actual murder in my family. There's just long been this story that my family's talked about, and because we're Italian American, my family is filled with storytellers and liars, and have always talked about how my great-great-grandmother Lorenza Marsala was murdered in Sicily before she could join the rest of her family in America. And a lot of my relatives didn't even know her name. They were just like, your great-grandmother, your great-great-grandmother. They couldn't even get the greats right. But they held on to this family lore, this family story. There were a lot of, theories out there that she was murdered by the mafia, that she was murdered because she was a witch. But I just think that those were more self-serving than anything else. And I became fascinated by this after I had my daughter. because I was really just interested in, why don't we know more stories about the women in our family? We talk about the men. We talk about the men who came over and started a new life here in America, but we didn't talk about the woman who was left behind. And that's what really inspired the Sicilian Inheritance. And so, as much as I packaged it as a delicious, adventurous beach read, which it is also a story about women's ambition and agency and motherhood, and what are the stories that we tell about women, and what are the stories that we pass on.
Interesting.
See, I love it so much. And like, I hesitate like talking more about it because like the real impact is in the ending and I don't want to ruin the ending for everybody. So I'm going to like phrase my questions very carefully in this, because I love how you describe, like, we don't talk about the women and their ambition, because so often I feel when talking about like our grandmother's generation, our great grandmothers, it's like, oh, they were so selfless for their family. They put their family first. When it seems so different than how our lives are currently. I have a disconnect on how our grandmothers could so and so put their families first. And we are living in this world where I just feel this rage if I don't get the time for myself and I don't get my needs met. And so your book and describing and I'm horrible with names in books and remembering it. What is the grandmother's name in the book?
Serafina.
Ooh,
So
I love that. I can see your hair like blowing in the wind.
So the way you describe Serafina in the book and how she was like studying health, the village doctor, basically, that was a woman that I could relate to, that I have never heard a story that of the past before. Was that story based on your kind of conjectures on what it may have been? Or is that like, did you dig up stuff about your grandmother?
No, it was fully based on conjecture. When I decided to write this as a novel, I decided it would be fully fiction. I did not investigate what actually happened to Lorenza until the book was written. I did do academic research into the time period. I read a lot of research papers, worked with a lot of professors who had studied women during this Great Migration from Sicily. The one thing that I learned was that when the men did leave Sicily to come to America, entire towns were left to women, and that women did take the men's jobs, and that many of them learned to read and to write for the very first time. And that was a very powerful thing. It was this strange kind of feminist moment in Sicilian history that only a few academics had written about. I had certainly never heard this. And we're not going to give away the ending of the book, but
which is so good. Everyone needs to read it because you're just like, your heart will be full.
It's a banger. It's a real banger of an ending. And I knew that's the only thing I knew. And this gets into the writing process in the weeds just a little bit, but I don't outline. I fly by the seat of my pants when I write. And I sit down every day. I usually, when I'm not on a deadline like I'm on right now, I write 1,000 words a day. And right now I'm writing 1,500. But I fly by the seat of my pants. I think there's a lot of magic that happens in that. I think characters and ideas just kind of come to you. But I knew the ending. I just didn't know how we were going to get there. And I really, really what you said about historical fiction. I, for a long time, have not been a historical fiction reader because I think it often paints a false version of women in the past. And with Sicilian Inheritance, we're getting a lot of people saying, I don't like historical fiction, but I love this, because we often see women in a past timeline who we turn into saints. We turn them into saints. We turn them into martyrs. We make them unfun. We make them unsexy. And I wanted Serafina, who, was a character from the turn of the century, to be relatable, because women had a sense of humor. They had desires. They had passions. Not everyone is speaking in very proper old world speak. I mean, they make bawdy jokes and talk about poop and and want to have sex. And like, I do think that like even female writers, historical fiction writers, do women such a disservice by kind of de-sexing us in a past timeline because we assume that was humanity really so different back then?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my disconnect I have, because it does seem like in most historical fiction that humanity was a lot different. And I have to agree with you. I don't think it was. I don't think it could have been that different. We couldn't have evolved that much as women during that time to have totally different needs now. Something else that you delve a lot into, especially on your Instagram account. So switching gears a little bit from the Sicilian Inheritance, which everyone needs to go get. If you're listening right now, get it on like Audible or get it at like hardcover. Mine is signed by Joe, which I'm very excited about. But I want to get into these trad wives that you talk about in your Instagram.
Totally.
And let's get into it right after this. Okay. So trad wives is actually something that you brought to my like forefront. I had no idea they were a thing until you mentioned it and you like put this account on your Instagram. Can you give everybody a kind of rundown on what a trad wife is?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been covering internet culture, for better or worse, for 4 years, which is shocking to me because 4 years ago, I wanted to create a podcast called Under the Influence that was a deep dive into influencers. At the time, I had a colicky baby. I can't believe that colicky baby is about to be 5 years old. She didn't sleep, and so she would only sleep if I was rocking her all night long. My only appendage that was free was my thumb, and so I was scrolling Instagram and constantly being served these perfect seeming mom influencers who were all trying to sell me something, whose life looked insanely perfect, and I hated them and loved them, and they were aspirational, and I also wanted to drop kick my phone every time I looked at them.
Right.
And so I did what I always do when I'm confused about something. I reported the hell out of it. And I thought that I was just going to be puncturing the veil and exposing these women. And instead, I, really discovered the $16 billion creator industry, where a lot of things are smoke and mirrors, where a lot of people are selling you fantasies, but where a lot of women are also creating media brands and are entrepreneurs because the corporate career world is toxic for women and for mothers. And so this is the other path. And I had a lot of feelings about it. I thought this was going to be 8 episodes. We are now on episode 150 of Under the Influence. We are now 2 episodes a week, and we dive into everything about being a woman in the world, but particularly how social media impacts our lives, because social media is media now, for better or worse. And, mainstream news pretends that that's not the case, and they're wrong and they're dying. So I've really been following this recent trend of the hashtag tradwife, and it's been picking up steam in the past. I mean, it's been around for about 2 years. It's really picked up steam this year. I don't think that we can divorce the hashtag tradwife situation from conservative forces also taking over politics in our country. They're very, very tied together. In fact, we know that a lot of the tradwife themes are boosted on Instagram by various conservative lobbying groups who want to this idea of a quote unquote traditional marriage. And now I do like to say when I talk about this, I am not talking about what we often refer to as stay-at-home moms.
Right. Because there is a distinct difference there.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
Number one, I hate the word stay-at-home mom. I don't know who created it. I say this enough that I should find out who created it, but it was clearly a man, because who the fuck is staying? No one is staying. Okay.
Yeah, it was like, I'm willing to put money on that.
Yes. It makes it sound like it's a vacation.
It makes it sound like it's a vacation, and we know that it is not. And so when I'm talking about tradwives, this has nothing to do with the mothers who are working inside the home, who are the CEOs of their household, who are doing labor at home. This is a very particular thing where a woman is kind of cosplaying false nostalgia for a different time. We see a lot of women dressing up in night outfits, Donna Reed, June Cleaver, Betty Draper on steroids, for a vision of America that never truly existed outside of the television.
Right.
or more of a back to the land, little house on the prairie, homesteading, caring for your 9 to 12 children.
God.
It's
You
like,
know,
but it's also unsustainable what I see them doing. Like they do cosplay and
it's
dress up
cosplay.
and
It's yes, they're creating a fantasy for a
Mhm.
brand in order to make money off of your eyeballs watching them. I don't believe that anyone truly believes all of this. And the issue with the trad wives is not even the costumes or the cosplaying of poverty whilst living a little house on the prairie fantasy. It's
Mhm.
it's the fact that they are touting submission to their husbands. They're giving up their agency. They're, touting what they call is the ultimate, and all power flows through him. It's a very conservative Christian patriarchal message, is what it is.
Mhm.
And I do think a lot of these brands, and I don't even say a lot of these women, because we're talking about a brand when we talk
Mhm.
about this
Yeah.
Yeah,
on
they're making money
Instagram.
off their accounts.
They're making
They're
money.
definitely
They're making money.
intentional
And
entrepreneurs.
they're
Mhm.
making money by selling you this kind of fantasy. A lot of it is very pretty in a very simply, superficially aspirational way. Where I think it is dangerous is that we know that corporate culture has been toxic for women and mothers. We
Yeah.
know that the girl boss leaning in was incredibly toxic and didn't work for a lot of people, because corporate culture
Mhm.
is not created for women. It's created for Don Draper, to go back to Mad Men again and again, which I can over and over.
Which I kind of wish that like I was a Don Draper. I mean, he
100%.
had an alcohol cart right in his office. He got to nap on the couch during the afternoon.
Yeah.
There was all of these great things that like even in Mad Men, the women portrayed in Mad Men did not have that luxury ever.
No,
Ever,
never,
ever.
never. Peggy never even got that. I mean,
No.
once she became an actual ad executive, I don't think she had her own whiskey cart.
No.
So no,
I mean,
exactly. I mean,
did
again,
you
and
watch
it's
Mad Men, Brie?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah.
I
I
agree.
mean, one of the greatest shows ever created, guys. Okay, and totally holds up. Totally holds up.
The thing that gets me about the whole trad wife thing is that I have a teenage daughter, and
Mhm.
she was saying that one of her friends wants to do is grow up and like for her
Yes.
family.
Mhm.
And my daughter's like, "Are you kidding me? What are you thinking?" And she's like, "No, it just looks nice to knit and bake all day long." And
It
I'm
does
like,
look
"That's
nice. It
not what
does.
happens."
Yes,
It
right? It
does
looks
look
nice.
nice.
Yeah.
And this is not to discount baking, okay?
Mhm. No, I love
Because
baking. I love it.
I do not. I
love
am
eating
Joanne
after
has
baking.
a
I
talent.
yeah,
Mini talent.
I should not be in the kitchen, full stop. But this
Yeah.
is not to discount any domestic labor. Here's the problem. And this is why I think this is an issue. Young girls, young women are watching this, okay?
Mhm.
And they're like, that looks easy. All of these accounts flatten the labor of motherhood. They
Yes.
flatten all of the domestic labor. And so these girls think, all I'll do is bake all day. And they don't realize the work that goes into being a full-time mother, being a full-time wife. And they may also think, oh, it looks nice for a man to support you. But what happens when
Yes.
that man leaves, or that man invests in like a weird venture and loses all of your money, and you have no idea
Or
because you have no
even
control of your
'Cause it happens.
finances.
or even the fact that where you deal with the fact that the climate of the relationship changes and then the man sees you as a burden.
Yes,
And
all
then
of
you
these
are
things.
treated as a burden.
All of these things, okay? Like
Yeah.
we know that is reality. And so young women who are watching social media the same way we watched Beverly Hills 90210. And I say this because at 44, I know you guys are slightly younger than I am. At 44, I believe everyone is my
no,
age.
dear.
at
I'm
this
probably
point.
slightly older, but that's okay.
Okay. I'm just saying. It's like I've reached
I'm
the age.
42. I'm almost
Oh,
there.
we're the same age.
We're
Yeah,
good.
no,
Yeah.
no, but I've reached the age where I believe everyone is my age. But I was like, what
I know,
if I
right?
Like 20 something the other day, and they're like, we're not the same age. And I'm like,
Oh, I know.
Okay, it's really funny though because I'm seeing like these YouTubers with kids
Mhm.
now, and I'm like, you look really young. Are you old enough to have that child? And they are. They're in their 20s and
Well,
this
because
are.
again, in our heads,
I'm seeing it.
it was just the 90s, like 20 years
Yesterday.
ago. It was
Yesterday.
like 10,
And
15.
if we want to take a real squirrel, seeing the high schoolers wait for the bus, they are dressed exactly like we were in the 90s.
Oh, I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I was walking my dog. I was walking my dog this morning, and this guy was coming towards me with a Smashing Pumpkins t-shirt on, the same one that was promoted in the. No, they have 90s fashion.
Oh yeah, my
down.
daughter is like, I
Right.
need to go to this vintage place because they have vintage
Yeah.
concert t-shirts, and you're like, God, the money I would have made had I
They're
kept all
called
of that.
vintage. They're called vintage.
They're called vintage. Wow.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
harsh.
Wow.
So
That
far,
is-
we've talked about a lot with the past, with your grandmother, and then how you write about Serafina. And we talked about kind of what's happening with the trad wife movement and this conservative bent. Coming up, I want to talk about present day. And in fact, how it ties to your novel in the past, The Charlotte Walsh Likes to Win.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're going to talk about that right after this. Okay. I have not read Charlotte Walsh Likes to Win, but what I've seen of it, I'm like, that's next on my to be read list.
It needs to be next on your to be read list. I'm going to say, girls, I decided 2 nights ago after having 3 IPAs, which is essentially having like 20 beers, that we need to get Charlotte Walsh Likes to Win on the bestseller list right now.
Yes.
That
Let's make a movement.
I'm making a movement to make that happen because
What's our hashtag going to be?
I think it's hashtag She Likes to Win is
All
our
right.
hashtag. This book, I mean, I wrote this novel 8 years ago about what it was like for a woman to run for political office, to have ambition, and it is more relevant than ever. And I want everyone to buy this freaking book right now.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yes.
I'm gonna get this book immediately.
Order this book, order it for 3 friends, tell everyone to buy Charlotte Walsh Likes to Win ASAP, such that they're actually probably going to run out of stock and they have to reprint it. And I think that would be amazing.
I think that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're recording this right after Kamala is now presumptively the nominee, and this will air in September. So we're hoping that it's still going good. But
you never
tell
know.
us, like, what are some of the things in your book that Charlotte Walsh comes across as like running as a female candidate?
Oh my God. Guys, I mean, it's just amazing. It is amazing that it still holds up. Like I said, I wrote this book in the wake of 2016, and it was originally supposed to be a satire of what it takes for a woman to run for office. And when I proposed it and when it sold to the publisher, we thought Hillary was going to win.
Yeah, well, so did a lot of us. I cried that day.
Yeah.
I cried.
And in the midst of the writing, she didn't win. The world became a satire, and it became less of a satire and more of a character-driven novel about what does it take for a woman to win political office and how hard it is for a woman to win political office. And so in the book, Charlotte Walsh is a tech executive in Silicon Valley who returns to her hometown of Scranton, PA, to run for Senate in Pennsylvania, a state that has still, even 8 years later, not elected a woman to the Senate or to be governor ever. And, it is a book about politics, but it is also a book about a family. Her husband moves out with her. He takes a back seat to her job and her ambitions, and that does not work out well for anyone involved. And we see the behind the scenes of what a political campaign does to a marriage, of how the media treats a woman differently than they treat men. And, I've had a front seat to that. I've covered every election since 2004. And I'm checking, I'm checking out of, full-time political coverage now, mostly because I think I would want to shoot myself in the face, but
it's a bit much to swallow.
Yeah. I've been on the front lines of this for a very long time. I'm guilty of covering women candidates differently than I've covered male candidates. I was forced at one point to write an entire screed against Hillary Clinton wearing a goddamn scrunchie, and I hate myself for it. I still think about that all the time. And so Charlotte faces an uphill battle in this Senate race. The media is against her. It's her, even her husband seems like he's against her part of the time. And it's really difficult. And I was hoping the book would be outdated, is what I was hoping.
Yeah.
I was hoping that, we would not continue to face this 8 years later. And now we are seeing Kamala being attacked in the exact same way that I wrote in this book, as partially satire, right? And I think it's actually worse now. It's astounding to me. The book really holds up. it had been in production for a TV series, right? Julia Roberts bought the rights to it right after it was published, actually before it was published. And we had a whole writer's room. We had 8 episodes written. Amazon bought it. Julia Roberts bailed because she had a dream that told her not to do it. Hollywood stars are fucking assholes, okay? But now we've retooled the scripts a little bit, and it's going back out to market again. But the scripts didn't have to be retooled very much.
So I know one of the things to make sure, like, dealing in unconscious bias land, to make sure that you don't act on unconscious biases, it's good to like know exactly what to look out for. So what should we be looking out for in terms of how the media is portraying a woman, so we could like immediately see it and go like, that's bullshit?
Yeah, it's a lot of things in terms of how women are described. Like, really be cognizant of how women's voices are described. That's a big one. Women are often described as whiny, overly emotional, or brash and scary. When literally they're speaking the same exact way that a man does, but we somehow hear the tones of a woman's voice in a different way than we hear a man's. Women's outfits are constantly critiqued at every.
And nobody gives a crap what a guy wears.
Nobody gives a crap.
Could wear the same suit every single day. And no one will say anything.
When I was watching the Biden-Trump debate, all I could think was, who's been doing Biden's Botox? Because it looks like shit. Because like whoever is doing his...
Well, obviously not the same person that does Matt Gates.
No, has done
whatever his name is.
Exactly. Has done a very bad job. And yet we don't cover men like that. But we certainly judge women on their appearance. And now, the attacks that we're already seeing from the Trump campaign, we know that they're going to go after Kamala for not having children. This is something that we will never attack a man for, 1, not being married, for 2, marrying 3 women and cheating on all of them.
Exactly.
Or 3, for how many children they've had in or outside of wedlock. We will not critique a man's personal life in the way that we will critique a woman's.
Because that has nothing to do with his politics or his policy.
Exactly. She is already being attacked for it. And that is really the big one. Like, we have to think, in terms of, would you, with everything, would anyone do this to a man? Would you think this about a man? Would someone write this about a man? And the answer, the majority of the time, is going to be
no, never. I know. It's like so ridiculous.
Can we, somebody had posted this on social media. I think it was our friend Shayna. But can we take a moment and acknowledge that this is probably the only time that we'll ever see the media say that a 50-year-old woman is young?
59-year-old woman.
59, right?
59.
Isn't she 59?
Yeah, she's 59.
We're like, she's so young.
She's
compared to like the 80-year-olds.
Rightly.
Going to
she is. She is.
But they normally like to say that the moment that a woman hits 50, she's too old. She needs to be bowing out.
She's too old. She needs to bow out of the world. Actually, you should shut up and drop out of society, girlfriend.
We don't have to see you anymore. You're just
we don't want to see. We don't want to look at your wrinkled ass face. And this is the first time in history that someone has referred to a 59-year-old woman as young and vibrant. I think the fact, it's very interesting to me because when I was writing Charlotte Walsh, I was focusing heavily on motherhood. I was leaning into that. I was pregnant with my first child while I was in the process of writing it, and really thinking about the fact that we have barely any politicians at all in the world who are currently bearing children. Who are, actively become female politicians, because, a male politician isn't doing the work, but, who are actively having babies. I can, count them on one hand. And in the book, Charlotte has young children, and we see her struggling with motherhood on the campaign trail, which is something we do not often see. And we also see her mothering criticized on the campaign trail. We see her criticized for allowing her husband to step in and help more with these children. And I think it's going to be very interesting to watch how Kamala is attacked for being a woman without her own biological children.
Well, I'm saying right now, I will defend that to the damn death, because that is just freaking ridiculous.
Yeah, you have to know it. You have to know it to see it. And yes.
And I appreciate you bringing that to light, because I don't think I had really thought about that. And now that you say that, I'm like, oh my God, yes.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's all
there's
good.
so many takeaways from Charlotte. I do. We're gonna get this on the bestseller list. Everyone buy Charlotte Walsh Likes to Win. I mean, still buy Sicilian Inheritance. So
I'm already thinking to win.
I'm already thinking like we should do a book club, Brie, for No Guilt Mom, like No Guilt Mom book club on the Charlotte Walsh Likes to Win. And Joe, you could come and you could talk about it and like
100%.
Zoom. And
I'm here for this. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. We're women. We make everything happen. Yeah.
It's going to blow up.
So what else? What are you excited about, Joe, that's coming up for you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, now our new plan to get everyone to read Charlotte Walsh Likes to Win. I'm crazily enough still on book tour for Sicilian Inheritance. And I did not expect to be. The book came out in April. Have 5 events planned in September, another 5 in October, a whole writing retreat in Vermont that I'm heading up in November. And I think it's because Sicilian has, it's gotten a lot of people excited about reading again. The best thing that I've heard about it is that it got people out of a reading slump. And we want to see vibrant, ambitious female characters who are helping each other. There's no male savior in this book. There's also no fairy or dragon sex, which I think that adult women are kind of sick of.
That's to the Court of Thorn and Roses, Brie. Yeah.
Okay. All right, then.
That's huge right now. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, God bless, but it's not my jam. And I think a lot of people want to
tired of it.
Want to read a grown-up book. And so, but one that is also fun. This is not literary. It is commercial as all heck. And it is just an easy breezy, fun read. So, I mean, really my life is all Sicilian Inheritance right now. And, continuing to be the mom to 3 feral children.
And to add on for Sicilian Inheritance, there is sex in a cave in a lagoon.
100%.
Which is great.
Sex in a beach cave. Sex in a beach cave.
There you go, Brie.
There's also sex in the ruins of an old church in the middle of Palermo, which I don't think gets talked about nearly enough. And it's grown-up sex is what it is. It's grown-up, efficient, easy in, easy out, still hot, still hot. But no one has wings or a magic vagina.
No one has wings.
That.
Well, thank you so much, Joe, for joining us.